Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Dan and Cheddar back here with another episode of By the Bay. Thanks so much for joining us on our weekly podcast, focusing on what's going on in the real estate world in the San Francisco Bay Area. And today we have kind of a different guest, someone that's not a realtor and is not a lender, not a title company person. This is Roger Savy, and I'll let him introduce himself. But Roger's job, he's the ambassador of Optimism. And his that's actually on your business cards, I think.
Yes, it is.
And from my perspective, Roger and I have worked together for some time, and what Roger does is help realtors and mortgage professionals and really homeowners in a way understand where they are and where they want to go, and help them plan their journey and making sure that they have thought of everything they need in their backpack to get from point A to point B. So Roger, thanks for joining us, and kind of jump right in and talk about what you're seeing right now with the people that you're coaching and people that you're working with in terms of real estate professionals and what the overall experience is right now.
Dan, thank you very much for inviting me. I look forward to being, I'm happy to be here. And you're right, in my professional career, I encounter loan originators and realtors, title professionals, and they're encountering three big headwinds at the moment. And the first big headwind they are encountering is distraction. In 1975, the average attention span of an American was 15 minutes. Today, Dan, 3.5 seconds.
Speaking of which, I need to check my phone real quick. I'm just playing, right?
What did you say?
Yeah, exactly.
3.5 seconds and dropping. So we have the attention span of a goldfish. And so can you imagine, you've got your heart in the right place, your north, your compass is facing north, you'd go around the world to bring your client a glass of water, yet you cannot get them to pay attention to you because they are so distracted. So that's headwind number one, Dan, is how do you get traction with people who are so distracted?
Right.
Secondly, I could step outside your studio here and throw a frisbee very gently. I'll hit 4 realtors or I'll hit 4 lenders. There is competition everywhere, and everyone's doing the same thing. No one's being particularly creative. And to convince realtors and loan originators, stop competing with everyone else. If you had 1 appointment last week and you've got 2 appointments this week, you're a winner. You're 100% more successful than you were last week.
That's fascinating.
Compete with yourself. Stop worrying about it. So distraction number 1, masses of competition. Start competing with yourself. And finally, Dan, the third headwind, commoditization. Just pick the loan officer who'll do it for the lowest interest rate. Just pick the realtor who'll drop their interest rate. How great to be considered just a commodity. So those are the big 3 headwinds people face, and I pledge to every single one of them that I get in front of, realtors and lenders that give me an opportunity, I will unshackle them from those 3 headwinds.
It's part of the day-to-day experience.
Yep.
I mean, it's you'll meet with a client and give them your best and do the consultation and really give them advice and help them and try to stand out from the crowd. And then sometimes it still comes back to, well, this person can do it for an eighth better in interest rate, which is $20. And it's definitely something that we coach around and talk a lot about is how do you stand out, not only from the people that you can throw a frisbee to and hit, but also people live in your phone, right? They're constantly being bombarded with messages and distractions and things that are meant to take you away from that local provider, that local professional who knows the landscape and the scenery, and drive you into some call center. I think there's a place for call centers, nothing wrong with that distribution model. But it is very fascinating, like how much distraction there truly is in the marketplace and what that does to a local professional realtor or mortgage lender.
Yeah, absolutely right, Dan. Absolutely right. There are about 15% of your clientele, whether it's borrowers or realtors or loan officers, that just want the lowest price no matter what. I've got some loan originator colleagues, Dan. Let's say they're going to a conference in San Diego. They will fly from San Francisco to Denver, down to Dallas, to San Diego to save $100 on their flight.
Right. That's a mindset, right?
Isn't that interesting?
Right.
They arrive late, they miss the first day, their spouse is tired and not talking to them, but good job, you've saved $100. So internalizing 15% you will never ever convince. But that other 85%, how do you see yourself as a loan originator, as a realtor? Do you see yourself just as a loan officer or as a gift and are going to stay the course, even though they say to you, I'm going to go somewhere else for an extra eighth in rate? I respect that you're going to do that. Would you mind if I check with you in 2 weeks to see if that company actually could deliver on you? Stay the course.
Totally. No, it happened. I mean, it's funny because, you're explaining my life, right? We do this all the time. I just had clients that we actually had the same rate or maybe slightly better, but they didn't want to go through the exercise of resubmitting their application and all of the documentation. I'm like, hey, I promise we make it easy. We've got technology. We're going to really help you. We'll walk it along. I'll come to your house. Like, what do we have to do to help you? Like, we're here. We're a service industry. We're here to help you. And they decided to stay the course with that other big national lender. And it was, they called me 2 weeks into the transaction and they said, we made a huge mistake. We made a huge mistake. We should have listened to you. We should have listened to the realtor that suggested that we work with you. And if we can go back in time, we would have made the different decision, but we didn't. And now we're here. I said, hey, we can still help you and we can bail you out and get you to the finish line. And they had, like, oh, give us 24 hours. We have to kind of see, we'll know if we're good or not in 24 hours. And they wound up figuring it out and they closed. But the interesting part with that is that they become clients of mine for life, right? They'll never go back and make that mistake again. And they become my biggest advocates. And they're the ones who are saying to their friends and family and so on, like, you need to work with someone who knows what they're doing, that has a professional operation and will take care of you. And this is the person that we want to connect you with. So while we don't win that battle, we win the war in the long run. So is that what you're seeing out there in the space? Because you talk to a ton of people in the real estate industry all over. Is that the general?
You're absolutely right. And clearly, just by the example that you gave me there, Dan, you approached that client when they told you they were going somewhere else. You could have told them to go pound sand, but you didn't. You saw the bigger picture. I'm disappointed,
right,
but I trust. So you approach the world with generosity. And that overarching authenticity, seeing the bigger picture, it may be a slower game, but the return on investment is huge. And that little demonstration of kindness compounded over time, that person will never leave you. They will remember how they were treated by you. And that's what I'm seeing. Do you remember in the old days, it would be your sales manager would always say, ABC, always be closing. And you were always trying to close, and people felt they were waiting to be manipulated. Mm-hmm. And people don't want to be manipulated, Dan. They want to be motivated. You didn't manipulate them. You came across with authenticity.
Right.
You built trust, and they came back.
So if the mantra isn't ABC anymore, what do you think it should be?
ABC still, but always be connecting, always be contributing. That's the other side of the ABC coin. And when you are continuously contributing and connecting, people then begin to see how much you actually care when you do this consistently. And that's when they build up a hormone in their bodies called oxytocin. Oxytocin, Dan, is the cuddle hormone. It's the moral molecule. Whenever you get a little crazy in your world, oxytocin levels rise. And when you are continuously nice to people, the oxytocin level rises, and it's such a certain level, which is different for each individual, they come back to, and that's the law of reciprocity.
Right.
You put in enough time, they come back to you.
It's that thing that people say, I don't know why, but whenever I'm around this person, I feel good. Right?
Yes.
Like that's the biology or the chemistry behind what that feeling is like, right?
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. So going back to those headwinds, I think I really kind of want to focus in on those.
Yeah.
Someone's watching, listening to this, they're in the real estate industry, or maybe they're even a consumer they're looking to buy a home, because I think these things also apply to homeowners, right? So how can we combat those headwinds?
And again, that question gets asked to every coach, every ambassador of optimism, every unshackler. And they will always somehow take you back to a core foundation. What do you see your purpose in this world? What's your purpose in this world? And I speak to realtors and loan officers often, as you say, Dan, and I ask them, what do you do for a living? And they say to me, I'm a loan officer in Sonoma. I'm a loan officer in Santa Rosa. I say, oh, very nice. My brother's a loan officer, or my brother's a realtor. See what I did? I genericized you. I've got a friend in the business, and I move on. How about if you decided, when someone says to you, what do you do for a living, that it just flowed from you, that you said, I walk a mile in my client's shoes, because I don't live with my clients, but I have to live with myself. They will make the finest decisions in real estate. You say that to me with enough passion, you've just broken my distraction model. I go, son of a gun, what do you do for a living? No, well, I'll say, you need to speak to my brother or my sister. He needs to hear your passion about this. Do you lead from the inside out, your why, your purpose? Because this is the reason you are fear-bound at the moment, that you are scared to call your database, that you are scared to activate your sphere because you just see yourself as a realtor or a loan officer, just another cow in the field. Why don't you become the purple cow, as Seth Godin always says?
Totally.
Stand out. What is your why? What is your purpose? You lead with your why, Dan, in everything you do.
And honestly, that's not where I started. When I started in the industry, it was a rate game. It was a race to the bottom. Who could be the cheapest? And that was kind of how I was taught. And I realized that at a certain point that if I was going to be successful and achieve the goals I wanted to achieve and provide for my family the way that I really wanted to, that I had to change everything. And I did. And I really had to get down to the real cause of why. And I speak passionately about it when I talk to my clients. I genuinely care about people. I want them to have a safe place to raise their families. It's important to me that they have financing that allows them to meet those long and short-term financial goals. And I lose sleep when I know that there are people out there that are being underserved, lots of people can make you a mortgage loan. There's plenty of them. Like you said, throw a Frisbee and you'll hit 7 of them. They're all over this business park where we are now. There's four different companies. What makes us different? Well, it really comes down to how you make people feel. It's that they know that if they work with someone on my team, with me or my team, that we're going to take care of them, that we are going to make sure that they have all the information they need to make an educated decision, and that we're going to be their advocate. We're going to empower them. We're going to encourage them. We're going to educate them. It's kind of like our 3 E's, right? Educate, empower, and encourage. Absolutely. And it's critical that they feel that. And I tell you, anecdotally, we'll get back to the real talk here, but when I don't do that, if I'm having a bad day, feeling off, not totally clear-minded, don't do my morning routine, don't get into that headspace where I'm like operating at my full potential, I lose clients. Because they don't walk away feeling that difference and like, oh, his rate was just the same as everybody else. Why would I go through the trouble of making a change? The inertia is hard to overcome. When I am dialed in and I can communicate my true why, people are excited to work with me. And they are, and then we back it up. It's not just talk. It's do communicate clearly what you're doing and then actually do the work, right? So you can say I've got the best follow-up in the entire world and then never follow up. And that's gonna get you at 1 or 2 deals, right? By just saying those words. But if you want clients and referral partners for life, you've got to actually show up and do the hard work and be present and overcome all of those, the headwinds. So anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but so
no, if I could add a comment to that is the difference between transformational and transactional thinking. Science and data make you think, but your feelings make you act. So you are clearly working upon people's feelings, and that is more the impetus to take action than for anything else. And your success, Dan, is a result of that. But it takes a little longer to build that up. It takes a little longer because if you've just got that where's my next lead approach versus no, somebody I know knows somebody who should know me.
Right.
So if I just love on the person in front of me, they will tell someone else and I'll get a warm referral. What a nice way to do business.
Absolutely. And I think one of the one of the things that we look at is the long game,
Yep.
right? And wanting to do business for a long time the right way. I think there are plenty of people in the profession that will manipulate, and they will tell you what you need to hear to get that one deal from you. And then they burn the bridge behind them as they go over the river.
Yep.
That's not a business model that works. That's what they would call being in business the first year over and over and over and over again. You're starting at scratch because you don't have a go-to database. You don't have people that are going to come back to you and refer to you. And that's perfectly fine if people want to do that. That's not for me. I like to spend time with my clients socially and connect with them and talk to them on their birthdays and be involved in their lives, because we are responsible for the biggest debt that they take in their entire life, almost always. There are a few exceptions to that. I think some doctor programs and in the Midwest might have an inverted anyway. And I think it's irresponsible for people just to pop into people's lives for 30 or 45 days, sign them up for a 30-year mortgage, and then never speak to them again, not be there to advise them and continue the education. Homeownership doesn't stop when you close on the house. That's the beginning of homeownership. That is not the end game. There's so many other things to do after that. Tax things, supplemental taxes from the county, home improvements, move up decisions. There's so many things to be involved with people's lives. And it became clear to me that there was a calling. That sounds like a little lofty, but there was a mission to fulfill here in the industry, to change the dynamic of going from someone who can make you a loan to being someone who advises you and cares about you for the life of your relationship, right?
Yep.
And then putting together that sequence of events that we take our clients through and showing them the difference between us and everybody else, because there's a clear difference. Even though at the end of the day, they wind up with the same product, right? They wind up with a 30-year fixed mortgage.
Yep.
And it's no different than what they would have got down the street, except for it's completely different.
Except that it's completely different.
Right.
Because they have a better comprehensive understanding of what that debt they've just incurred means to them.
Sure.
And truly to have that advisor for life. And that all came from you working on their feelings, where they trusted your authenticity,
right,
and that you were very direct with them.
Right, totally. So headwinds. Okay, headwind one,
Yep.
distraction.
Competition.
So headwind one is distraction. I think I read somewhere that we look at our cell phones it's something shocking. It's some very short period of time that people open like the lock screen on their iPhone like hundreds of times a day. Have you seen that study?
I have seen that study, Dan. I have. And it's so interesting that you come back to the cell phone, because in the old days, our boss used to sit in the corner office, and you would go and see your boss about something. The boss would tell you what to think or what to do or give you direction. That boss no longer sits in the corner office. That boss is that smartphone of yours. It tells you what to think. If you wanted to do a project in the old days, you'd go to the library, you'd crack a book, you'd go and talk to a mentor. Now, whether you want that information or not, it comes at you through your smartphone. And we all go to our little sources where we get our information from. And so it creates bubbles where we look at each other and say, fake news, no, you've got fake news. That has dominated our lives, and we even get phantom vibrations. We think we're being buzzed, and we check it over and over and over again. And of course, emails, something like 1,500 times a day, we check to see if we've got
I'm so
emails.
guilty of that. I do. I sit there and I hit refresh, especially when I'm waiting for something to come in. I'll just refresh, because I want to take action. I want to go now.
Yeah.
And it is an absolute distraction. So when you're working with you're coaching somebody,
Yeah.
how do you help them overcome this societal thing that's being ingrained in us? Because I've had those phantom vibrations where
Yep.
I don't want to miss a call, especially if it's from like my wife or a friend or someone I'm expecting to speak with. And it's just the cell phone sits here all the time. It's on the bedstand, right? It's always within reach. So how do we overcome that to be more present?
Yeah. One of the greatest predictors of our success is when we decide how long can we go without wanting to be informed about something. In other words, can we create a bubble of silence for just 1 hour once a week. 1 hour once a week where you just sit down with an executive pad and a pen and write down all the projects that you're working on that are urgent and important, and then another list of projects that are important but not yet urgent, and just mind map what you're doing with it. I guarantee you, once you start, Dan, that 1 hour of bubble of silence, 15 minutes into it, you'll go, well, it must be 1 hour. And you'll look at the clock and, my God, it's only 15 minutes. But your brain is screaming at you, where's my cell phone? So if we can get the habit of 1 hour of bubble of silence once a week, we begin to take control of our lives back again.
I might have to buy like a timed safe and put it in my office and like put all my electronics in there, set it for 1 hour, like cannot open this because it is such a distraction. Yeah. I do have time blocking, and I have a remarkable tablet, and it's the next, it's pretty much an executive pad, right? It doesn't access the internet or do anything interesting. And I'll sit there like, hey, I've got my list of things. I've got these 3 or 4 projects I need to really put some brain power into. And I get about 10 minutes in, and then one of the projects will lead me to like, oh, I forgot to do that thing. I didn't email that person. I needed to follow up on this marketing initiative. I needed to reach out to so-and-so about something. And I can't help myself but to get up, get on the computer, send the email. But then that email leads to 4 more emails, and then something else pops up. And then the chat application that we use comes up with 4 of the things I need. And next thing I know, my hour's done.
Yep.
And I've done 10 minutes of the hour. Right? So help me understand, like, how do we overcome that?
So, as I said, if we can begin to create a period of time where we only set aside time to think, our brains have become so accustomed to doing things in the here and now, being distracted from our morning routine. So we just suddenly live our lives with serendipity rather than intention, and it becomes a new us. Our personalities are just a combination of all our activities and habits. If we can begin to wrestle control with half an hour to an hour once a week, and then deciding I'm going to activate that database of mine and I'm going to get back into the flow, and I'm going to talk to the people that know me, trust me, like me, have entrusted me with money in the past, and or might not have given me a money but speak me up. So there's the 2 buckets. Anyone who has entrusted me with their money in the past, and or anyone who speaks me up. What am I doing daily to add value to those 2 buckets? And listen to understand rather than listen to respond. And that comes from having your morning routine, get yourself into peak state, get to the office in the morning at the same time, and when you open your planner and you see from 9 to 9:30 is time for me to speak to those 2 buckets with authenticity and love. Watch your world begin to change, because 1 or 2 things can change everything.
I love that answer. It's not a wholesale change that people need to make.
Yeah.
It's incremental
things over time.
A 30-minute change in your day can change everything in your life and your business.
Yep.
It's honestly, it's encouraging, because I speak to a lot of loan originators around the country. In addition to what we do here at our company, I do some coaching and talk to different people, and I've been a featured speaker at Todd Duncan's Sales Master. You were there, which was really cool. And shout out to Todd. And in my conversations, I hear of a lot of people in the industry, realtors, loan originators, et cetera, that are struggling, and they don't know what to do, and they want to know, like they want the silver bullet, and they think that it's make a wholesale change, become a completely different person. You want to be successful? Just stop being you and be somebody else that's successful. Like that's a lot of times the advice that they get, and it's encouraging and uplifting in a way that it's like, no, you don't have to be different. You are great. You are perfect the way that you are. There's a little tweak that you need to make that's going to open a world of opportunities to you. And it's just something as simple as turning off your phone from 9 to 9:30 and being able to focus on those 2 buckets of people. And if you do that consistently every single day, watch the phone start ringing with people who are excited to be working with you and want to do business the way that you do business, right?
That is such an uplifting message. You're absolutely right. You don't have to do 180-degree turns in your business, 1 or 2 degree tweaks with that little bit of focus. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And if I could get a little granular, to the loan officers and realtors that may be listening to this podcast with Dan, and again, like you said earlier, shout out to Todd. I learned so much from him as well. And by the way, watching you on stage with him was inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
It was 2 fabulous, intelligent people that still managed to make 1 + 1 = 3.
Oh, I think you're talking about Todd and Linda, because I was not one of the, those 2 really did a great job.
Yeah. No, you did a fabulous job. I really enjoyed, but let's come back to the granular stuff. Once you've identified those 2 buckets, those who've entrusted you with their money in the past and or those who speak you up, your ambassadors, your advocates, now decide every single day I'm going to speak to 6 of them. 2 emails, 2 voicemails, 2 personalized notes. 2 by 2 by 2. 6 people a day. 2 get an email, 2 get a voicemail, 2 get a personalized note. That's 6 people. And tomorrow another 6 people. And just keep going. Most of your colleagues don't fail, Dan. They simply quit too soon. And they do this enough until the law of reciprocity kicks in. That one little thing can change everything. But they say to me, Roger, I just don't know what to say. I've let 6 or 7 months go by. What am I going to say on that email, that voicemail, or that personalized note? Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it on the Dan Show right here. Here's what you lead with. Let's say it's a voicemail you're leaving, or they pick up the phone, or the personalized note, or the email. It goes like this. Dan, it's Roger here. Yes, I know, a blast from the past. Look, I could kick myself I don't stay with you, in contact with you more often. You crossed my mind last night, and I wasn't going to let another day go past without reaching out and saying hello. That is the big pink elephant in the room. If you can just learn that simple script and get into doing your 2 by 2 by 2 every day, everything else pales. You will notice the difference in your life. Roughly 45 days to build the habit, and in 60 to 90, the reward starts. Keep going, build.
I love that. And I think, and then being consistent with follow-up after that, right? Don't let another 8 months or a year go by and then send that same email again, because that becomes disingenuous at a certain point, right? You have to really, really want to connect and build that habit and make sure that you keep connecting with those people over and over again, that you show up in their life. One of the things, speaking of Todd Duncan, one of the things he says is if you want clients for life, you have to talk to them during their life.
That's right. You have to talk to them during their life.
Right.
Isn't that just so wonderfully simple yet profound?
Right.
Absolutely right.
He said that at one of the sales academies that I've been to, and it just is always stuck in my mind of like, yeah, duh. Like that's absolutely. If you want people to come back to you, referral partners, even friendships, if you want people to be close to you, you have to talk to them.
Right.
You have to pick up the phone and interact. And for some people, that's very uncomfortable, especially I think coming through the pandemic and people were isolating, and a lot of hurt that people are experiencing and trauma really from that. And I think that it's a skill that people need to build back. And I think like having that type of conversation in a script they can go to would really alleviate some of that pressure up front. And then they can get into their more natural, personable state, connect with people genuinely, and then reconnect with those folks.
Reconnect, exactly right. Just get back into that flow. I often ask that question to some of my mentees. What's the difference between a long-term relationship and a fling or a one-night stand? And I get some really smart-ass answers on that. But the essential difference is the level of commitment. And so when the deal was on with those people, it was hot and heavy and you loved it and you said nice things to each other. But when it closed and went to escrow and it closed, you moved on to your next fling. You earned it. Go back and rekindle those flames. Get that commitment again. And you watch. People, if you are authentic, will forgive you a myriad of sins and get back in the flow with you.
I love that. I think it's really important. And I think, going back to the pandemic times, we were incredibly busy, and everyone, there's no secret, but the mortgage industry was just crazy at the time. And we were doing deals for people we've never met. Like we've never even met these people. Still to this day, we've not ever met these people in person. We could be sitting next to each other on the bus or in a movie theater and not know that we are. I've seen all their financials, I know everything about them, right? But I wouldn't know that that's who they are.
Isn't that interesting?
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
And so it's what my takeaway of what I'm learning, like, how does this impact me and everyone hopefully watching and listening, is start today. Like, don't be afraid to reconnect and get out there and be vulnerable and put yourself out there and just say, hey, I didn't do a great job at doing this. And I hate that I did that, but here we are now, and I'm wanting to reconnect and find out what's going on with you. That's realtor partners that you haven't talked to for a while. People you did a deal 2 years ago with. They want to hear from you probably, and past clients, and even like friends that you maybe just lost contact with. Like, this is one of those moments, I think, where you look at it and you go, we're talking about business, but this also applies just in general for people. This is a life skill that people can use to enhance any relationship.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. So the power of now. Absolutely right. Get started. And I'm not sure how your audience gets in contact with you, Dan, but I would love to send on to you about 8 or 9 great scripts that if you can start off with the I could kick myself one, then what's the next one?
Right.
Where you recommend something. You can recommend a book, a movie, a drywall specialist, a bug spray guy. You give. Then you can transition to the forward conversations, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. And there's a series of about 8 or 9 that helps you get back in the flow with those 2 buckets.
Okay.
And I'd love to give it on to you.
We'll put those in the show notes, and we'll make sure that we have some links there, and we'll host those somewhere so people can go and access those.
Right.
So we talked about the distraction headwind, the commodity headwind. I think we kind of talked about that, right? Yeah. Loan officers everywhere, realtors everywhere, on your phone, in person. They exist all over the place, and you're getting it everywhere you go, on the radio, on TV, in your phone, in person, billboards, everywhere. It's prolific. What was the third one?
The third one was commoditization. Mm-hmm. There was distraction, competition, commoditization. And again, it all links back to see yourself more than just as a loan officer or a realtor. Look in the mirror and start to articulate those words about who you are. Do you say your affirmations in the morning? For example, I was coming here this morning. I knew I had an important Zoom at 10. I knew I was going to chat with you at 11. And so I wanted to get my brain and my mouth to coordinate with each other. So I've got a little routine I do in my car while driving. I count to 10 and back to 1, then to 9 and back to 1. And then I say things like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper, and I see how fast I can say it. So that I start to articulate my words, and then I start to speak slower so that my brain can hear what's coming out of my mouth. And then I realize less is more. I pick my words a little better. I put a little bit of emphasis on my words so that I get heard differently when I speak to people. I make sure I stand when I speak to people because my chair wants a little bit of my energy. The warrior's schedule on my desk. No, stand, smile, and deliver your dialogues and scripts with passion, because passion, more infectious than hepatitis and COVID combined, Dan. So these little tweaks in our day make all the difference. And then suddenly you're not a commodity. Suddenly you're not just a cow in the field. You suddenly become the purple cow because you change the way you are heard and people see you and you touch their feelings.
I love that.
Yeah.
Roger, I have 1,000 more questions to ask of you, and I really appreciate the conversation. I think that this is part 1 of a series. We'll just keep doing these because I think there's so much to do in this field. I think there's so much... There's such an opportunity to help people in this way. I think that there's a large audience that would be fascinated to hear more from you and looking at the world and their business through a different lens and helping to see that outside in approach. So we'll put in the show notes, we'll put the links to those scripts, some contact information from you if you don't mind, so people want to reach out one-on-one. And we'll have you back, and we'll do this again sometime real soon.
What an honor, Dan.
Roger Savy, thank you so much for being on the show. It really was a joy.
Much appreciated, Dan. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.